So moving into artificial sweeteners are typically 200 to 600 times sweeter than sugar. The FDA has approved 5 artificial sweeteners: saccharin, sulfame, aspartame, neotame, and sucrose. It also has approved a low-calorie sweetener, stevia. The American Heart Association and American Diabetes Association cautiously give the thumbs up to use artificial sweeteners in place of sugar in the war or to combat obesity. Not all of artificial sweeteners are calorie-free. So here's the recommended intakes. These are very, very, very conservative intakes for artificial sweeteners. And you can see that to meet these intakes, you would have to be taking in quite a bit, to almost an unrealistic amount of artificial sweeteners. So artificial sweeteners, particularly lately, have gotten a lot of media and sensationalism and a lot of correlative studies that have been sensationalized by the media, but we know that in science, correlation does not equal causation. Let's talk about artificial sweetener and insulin. A lot of people will report, well, artificial sweeteners are bad because they increase insulin. Multiple studies have been replicated that that's just not the case, as you're seeing here. So sweet taste receptors, low energy sweeteners, glucose absorption, and insulin release have proven time and time again that there is not a significant insulin release from the ingestion of artificial sweeteners. And I would argue that even if there was, artificial sweeteners by definition are extraordinarily low calorie. So even if there was an insulin response, there would be no calories or no glucose for that insulin to transport into body fat cells or anywhere else in the body. Artificial sweeteners and weight loss. The vast majority of studies have shown that those who consume artificial sweeteners tend to lose more weight, probably because they're satisfied. One particular study increased water intake for their subjects by 16 ounces a day, and then also did a non-nutritive sweetener or added that to the water, so it had a sweet taste, and they found that the water drinkers actually lost less body fat. The artificial sweetener drinkers lost a little bit more body fat, by about 20% more body fat. Now, that doesn't mean that the non-nutritive sweeteners used in this study caused the body fat. However, probably led to the people ingesting the artificial sweeteners to feeling more satisfied and eating less throughout the day, where the people who drank the water may went and eaten right after that because they didn't feel as satisfied. Most studies conclude that artificial sweeteners serve as a large caloric savings and therefore lead to weight reduction. There have been a minority of studies that showed that people who did eat artificial sweeteners gained weight, and that could be because they ate something that's very sweet. We already talked about their artificial sweeteners are 200 to 600 times sweeter, and then craved more calorically dense sweetened food. So they actually went out and ate more calories. Artificial sweeteners and cancer, this is a big one. There is no evidence to link high-dose artificial sweetener use with cancer in animals, and there is no evidence to support such a link in humans. Artificial sweetener data to date have shown no causal relationship to cancer. There have been rat studies that did show an association were carried out in rats, which due to different carcinogenic mechanisms in a rat cannot be translated to human consumption. And there's no studies suggesting positive links between cancer and artificial sweeteners in humans. None of them have been replicated. So what they have done is they have done some rat studies that have showed, wow, these rats developed cancer. They were also consuming artificial sweeteners. However, they weren't able to replicate that. So the argument would be that those rats were predisposed to cancer regardless of what they ate. You can't link that the cancer itself was caused by artificial sweeteners because they haven't been able to replicate that study. So there probably have been some studies where they rounded up rats that just happened to be predisposed to cancer, and regardless of anything that you would have fed them, they would have likely evolved into cancerous rats. Now, artificial sweeteners in the microbiome, there is some up and coming, very interesting research, not enough to necessarily say it's conclusive, but they have taken rats where they've emptied the microbiome of the rat, and then they've cultured a microbiome of a rat that's been fed majority artificial sweeteners. And they found that when they implanted those microbiota into the blank stomachs of the rat, that they developed glucose intolerance. So when a rat has their microbiome displaced or taken out, wiped clean, if you will, and they placed the gut or the microbiota of a rat that's fed a lot of artificial sweeteners, they have found that those rats develop glucose intolerance. So scientists are attempting to link glucose intolerance with disturbances of the microbiome. A conservative approach may be the best answer depending on your beliefs for your clients, but I think that a lot of it is the dose. Now, at Macro Missionary, we would probably take a conservative eye to artificial sweeteners just because they can be, as evidence in this study is showing them to be a little bit inflammatory, at least in rats, but they are very, very prevalent. They're in almost everything that we're eating, and a lot of times food manufacturers are putting artificial sweeteners even in with full sugar products because of how sweet they are, to make those products even more hyper palatable. So it's important that we can use artificial sweeteners as a tool. For example, if someone's having a tough time drinking water because it's just too bland for them, sure, we can use some stevia or an artificially low-calorie sweetened product to help them increase their water intake. However, we're going to want to be conscious of how much artificial sweetener they're taking in overall. So it's something that we can find that we can kind of easily macro dose up, even though the acceptable intakes are already set pretty high. We would have to look at the particular lifestyle of that client. So our final stance on artificial sweeteners and our recommendation for you and your clients would just to be an awareness. We want to be aware of how much artificial sweetener we're taking in. I would say if your client is great managing their macronutrient distribution, great managing their clients, I would kind of treat artificial sweeteners like alcohol. I would not necessarily suggest, I don't think there's any reason to suggest that they add them in. However, if you find that someone is maybe eating in a caloric surplus and they're constantly eating, grandma's cookies, you may want to make that small change and say, hey, you know what? Can you do less sugar and more stevia to make grandma's cookies? Let me know how they taste and take that caloric savings. So again, just being aware of how much artificial sweeteners are being taken in, that is going to be the definite main part of fighting that battle. And again, just because there's not a study out there today doesn't necessarily mean that we're not going to someday link artificial sweeteners to the microbiome or to cancer or anything else. So again, the conservative approach tends to be the best and most preferred. And that concludes our energy series. We hope that you'll purchase and subscribe to some of our other trainings, and our greater hope other than that is that you share this out with your communities, make people aware, get this information out, stop the fear mongering, and be educators in your